Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and in this episode of Major League Baseball picks, along the prices that make for good bets using the predictive mathematical model I've built, affectionately known as Sideline, for games scheduled to be played on Thursday, July 20th, 2023. In case you're new, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. Remember, if you're interested in projections and picks for games, sign up on Dub Club. That link is in the show description. Cost under $1 per day. We get money line prices, run line prices, first fives, totals, numbers needed for A grades and B grades, exclusive access to our Discord chat, and lots of other goodies. Remember that sports are unpredictable, so the discussion of this show projects a typical game and does not try to forecast it to a T, as that would be a foolish and impossible goal. There are no right sides or wrong sides or other prices where any side should be played. Whether using my model or someone else's, this is the probabilistic thinking that is going to be key to growing your bankroll over time instead of draining it. There are ups and downs, but it will balance out in the long run. It's just hard to foresee before it happens. In other words, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So while the long run profitability has been proven, winning every single day is an impossible reality for any gambler. This is Jared. Good to have you back on. I feel like, it's always more fun to have people on. And so I'm glad that we're able to get you and Jake on the show more often and chat about baseball. For whatever reason, we're only picking a couple games here, only discussing a couple games, right? If we talked about every game on a full slate, we'd have like 2-hour shows, which I know some people would enjoy, but
which I think you may have tried at one point, like last season or the year before.
Last season we did, and like I did, but for the full slate it was just me, and I tried to like rush through the games as quick as possible. They're like hour-long shows. With all the extra information we're talking about now, it'd be like 2 probably. The downside of only talking about a couple games, yesterday was a slightly down day for us overall. The downside of only talking about a few of the games is that, you get more variance. And unfortunately, the 2 days that Jake was on this week, those games that we talked about did not go well. So maybe you were the good luck charm coming on, and the games that we talk about here on show will go better. No pressure for you today.
Well, it can't be worse. So that's what I'll say. So yeah, like you said, no pressure.
It can't be worse, but that's the ups and downs, right? It's like when and this is why, I personally, and everyone has a little bit different view on this, but I kind of oscillate my personal thoughts. Like, it's more fun to play more games and kind of reduce some of that variance, right? Where you don't have that. I just happen to pick the 3 games one way or the other, but the downside is then I sometimes look and I see like how much better the A players are doing than everything else. I'm like, what if I just played A? So just kind of go back and forth between that. It's like the pros and cons of having fewer games in your card or more games.
Yeah, I kind of view it as like, investing in the stock market. It's all about diversification. That's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point that sports betting and the stock market should be viewed the same way, in my opinion. And, there is that balance you got to figure out between how much do you want to diversify versus how much are you focusing in on the specific areas where you think you've got the highest ROI. And that's a tough question. For every person. We've got a good slate, some games throughout the day, which will be good. I think, Cousin Jared, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you picked 3 games. You got 1 game early, 1 game in the middle, 1 game in the evening. So it's a nice spread out slate for us. Was that just an accident or what?
Yeah, that was an accident, but it works out well.
It works out really well. But before we get to that, some quick reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the MLB, college basketball, college football, or come in this fall NFL content that this channel provides. You will see how I scale my picks in the Google Sheet with the season results. That links in the show description. But as always, with the scaling with the picks, take what you like and leave the rest. 12:35 p.m. Eastern. Starting off with the Giants Reds. I think we've talked about this game every game of this series. The Giants have been good to us so far this season. Just fell short yesterday. And I likened them to last year's Mariners. yesterday. And I think that's a perfect analogy. Right? We made so much money in the Mariners last year. They didn't win every single game in the back 100 or so. We did back on like 80 of the last 100 games or something, it feels like. And they probably won like 60 of those 80 or something. You know, they didn't go perfect, but they did really well for us. That's kind of how the Giants are. You know, they couldn't quite get there yesterday, falling short by 1 run, but they've still been really good to us overall. Today, you've got a warm one in Cincinnati. Mid 80s for this game, approaching 90 by the time the game finishes. The wind, though, kind of blowing a little bit in, little bit across. And in that ballpark, that's really going to matter. Kind of depending on which weather forecast you use on this, you could kind of convince yourself the wind's going to be a little bit helpful to the pitchers or a little bit helpful to the hitters. And that really is going to matter a lot depending on where you're looking. You could swing the projected total by about a full run in this game. So that's something to keep an eye on there if you're betting totals. Models projecting somewhere around 10 to 11 runs. The actual total is 9.5. I could definitely be talked into going over 9.5. A little bit tougher, though, unless you have a better idea of exactly what the wind's going to be doing. With regards to the side, Alex Cobb and Andrew Abbott, y'all know we love us some Alex Cobb here. 2.82 ERA. Underlying metrics have him in the low 3s, maybe not quite that good, but very, very, very good pitcher here. And a guy I've long talked about as being underrated. Andrew Abbott for the Reds, 2.45 ERA, but the underlying metric suggests his ERA should be in the mid to low 4s. I think he's better than average, but not by much. I think there's a pretty big gap here between these starting pitchers, even though the ERAs might not indicate it. Giants offense a little bit better, especially when you consider the Reds. Cousin Jared, you and I were talking about this before we came on. The Reds have scored a grand total of, I think, 8 runs in 5 games if you remove the one game that got crazy. And even if you include that, they're still at 3 runs per game in the 6 games since the All-Star break. Talked about their offense really struggling. Their relievers, of course, fall short compared to the Giants. We're going to be on the Giants again here. Minus 117 gets us an A grade. With the updated projection this morning, anything better than minus 125 or better gets you an A grade. So you should be at an A grade kind of no matter where you're shopping. Obviously, shop for the best price. But this should be a nice, comfortable A grade for anybody. Cousin Jared, what do you got for me on this one?
Yeah, I like the Giants here as well. You hit on the starting pitching discrepancy, which I agree that it's fairly heavily in favor of the Giants. You also hit on how the Reds have not been playing very well since after the All-Star break, having trouble scoring runs. I think that is a big part of it as well. And then the other thing I would say, I think the Reds are just being slightly overpriced based on the fact that they've been a really exciting team to watch for the past couple of months, especially since Elly De La Cruz came up. So I think that's the number one thing here. I think that Reds are just getting too much respect. Definitely. I mean, they've been a much better team than any of us anticipated at the beginning of the season, for sure. But I think that's just gone a little bit too much in their favor. And I think it's just a little overpriced here. So I think there's value on the Giants.
The Reds have been a roller coaster of a team. I feel like there was a stretch when they started playing really well, where they were really undervalued. If you saw it and backed them, you did really well. But that's swung really quickly. They've been a really tough team, I feel like, to get a handle. I think they're the worst team according to my profitability metrics on the season because of that. Because early on it was pretty ho-hum. They just weren't very good, and then they started playing really well, and it took a bit for the model to catch up. And then now they're really struggling again. So they've just been kind of a roller coaster of a team. I have a really cold take on Elly De La Cruz, which is he's not going to be the MVP this year. And by that, I mean, prospects come up and don't typically just like light the world on fire, like for a full 100 games when they come up. That does happen occasionally, right? You do see it every once in a while. Obviously what Corbin Carroll's done this year has been just phenomenal. But I think part of the Reds' struggles here has been guys like Elly De La Cruz here, and right before the All-Star break started to struggle as well. Just, and I just think he's a really good player. I'm not trying to say he's not, right? He's going to be a great player. It's just, he came up and just lit the world on fire. And ever since then, has been just kind of, struggling a little bit more, which young guys do. That's totally understandable. No big deal. We're seeing a lot how one guy can matter to offenses this year, which is so shocking. I'm not a usual believer that the data doesn't really back that up historically, but you're seeing it. You saw it with De La Cruz and the Reds. You see it with Yordan Alvarez and the Astros. You definitely see it with Aaron Judge and the Yankees. And of course, I'm talking about some of the best hitters in the world, but I mean, it's just crazy how much some of these guys matter to these offenses. Obviously, as Astros fans, we're holding our breath for Yordan to come back. Which it feels like it's never going to happen. I don't know. It's like waiting for Christmas, right?
Yeah. It'll eventually get here. Well, no, the one that's never going to happen is Michael Brantley, but don't get me started on that.
Also true, and maybe not quite the same caliber, but still a very solid hitter that would definitely help our team out. Talked about those Mariners here, 3:40 p.m. Eastern. Going to play the last game of this series against the Twins. You've got a nice day in Seattle, probably going to open the roof up, make the ball fly a little bit more, slightly on the warmer side than usual, but not by much. It should be a very nice day. It's just typically that, at night they open the roof and you're talking about more in the low 60s. This game should be more in the mid 70s. So a little bit of a boost to runs based off of that. Pablo Lopez and George Kirby, if it wasn't for the weather, this would be a for sure under, but just giving a little bit of extra boost to the ball flying, that's gonna matter a little bit. Both of these guys have projections that are pretty similar. Pablo's been a little bit more unlucky this year. His ERA is almost a full run higher than Kirby's, but otherwise they project pretty similarly. Both project very well. If you look at those ERAs and think that Kirby's the better pitcher, Sideline actually thinks that Pablo's the better pitcher, not by much. But then once you get past that, while the Mariners bullpen is incredible, I have no words about the Mariners. I feel like that's my whole preview of this game is the Mariners. I feel like we need to have like a funeral for the Mariners, similar to, as Astros fans, right? Remember the one back in the day with Carlos Beltran and his glove? They had the ceremony of burial. We needed the Mariners. They were so good to us last year, and this year they just keep breaking my heart. Last night, we got them for the first 5 under, which was nice and easy. They come back and in general, and I want to talk about this with the pick here. I'll wrap back around to this later. In general, with the Mariners, you kind of it's been a situation where if you're backing them, you want to play them full game. And if you've been fading them, you want to fade them first 5 because how good that bullpen is. And that's how the edges have really split. The models picked up on that. Last night, it kind of played out like that. The Twins had the first 5 pretty easily. The Mariners come back. They're down 1 run in the 8th inning. Going to the bottom of the 9th, they've got literally 1, 2, 3 up in the lineup, and they decide to throw a pitcher who's thrown as many pitches in AAA as our daughters have. And sure enough, gives up a 2-run home run, and that's the ballgame. And it's like I just don't even know with this Mariners team. I'm so disappointed. I'm heartbroken. They were our boys last year, and this year, I cannot. We're on the Twins. Plus 120. Jumped on it last night. I don't know about you, Cousin Jared. For me, when I saw that there was a B grade on the Twins last night, I was kind of like, run, don't walk, because the model just has to love the Mariners from last year.
Right.
So it was kind of like, the model's saying fade the Mariners. Let's go. I know the Mariners will probably win this game because that's how the world works. But did you have the same thought as I did, which was like, Mariners fading the models. Let's get this one.
Yeah, definitely. It caught my eye that the Twins were the pick by Sideline here. I feel like I've talked about it, a handful of times this year. The Mariners, I think, are one of my most disappointing teams of the season. Coming into the season as an AL West fan, I would have thought that the Mariners would have been a lot better. They were the number 1 team that I was worried about going into the season, above the Rangers. You kind of mentioned on Pablo Lopez being a little unlucky. I want to look at George Kirby. George Kirby's been really, really good this year, but his whip keeps increasing slightly, and he's not missing a ton of bats. He's only averaging about 3/4 of a strikeout per inning or something, which for a pitcher that has been as good as he has been, you would have expected that number to be higher. And just based on what we've seen in baseball this season, if you're not missing bats, I think it's eventually going to catch up with you. So talking about Pablo Lopez being a little unlucky, I think George Kirby, as much as I like him, he's still a very good pitcher. I think he's been a little bit lucky. And so the fact that I can get a disappointing team, the Mariners, and fade them at plus 120, I'm all about that. I think the Twins, like you said, this was a run, don't walk for me.
Yeah, and I talked about the first 5 situation, and up until now, that's been the case where it would have been fade the Mariners first 5, don't mess with their bullpen as good as it is that last night, throwing a kid from AA, aside. Today I ran the numbers, and the edge on the Twins was a full letter grade, maybe letter grade and a half worse on them in the first 5. The split on this one was drastically different. It's like the sports books took them about a couple weeks here over the last couple weeks that Sideline's been figuring out, but kind of finally caught up and is really starting to maybe shift that situation. So something to keep an eye on here with the Mariners. that bullpen edge is like the bullpens are kind of figuring, if the books are kind of figuring out that's where it's at, maybe the first 5 fading them won't be as profitable. Maybe be like this and just go full game like we're doing here. Cousin Jared, I feel like I would be remiss if I did not talk about the fact that we've been doing player props, and these are the number 1 and number 2 most teams that are striking out in baseball this season. Of course, the books know that that's built into the numbers, but I did look into that for a player prop. I've got what I like better going to the next game, but I did look at that and thought there's a lot of strikeouts in this series. Neither one of these teams
making a lot of contact.
Say what?
Neither team making a lot of contact.
Neither team making a lot of contact. When they do, it's kind of all or nothing. For the Twins, that's kind of okay because when the guys have been hitting, they've been hitting. For the Mariners, it's kind of been a problem because they've been striking out a lot, and then when they haven't been striking out, they still aren't hitting very well. Again, very disappointing team for the Mariners. But moving on to our last game, where I do have that player prop for you here coming at the end. Orioles and the Rays. Obviously playing this one in a dome, slightly pitcher-friendly ballpark. Kyle Gibson, Tyler Glasnow. Gibson, at this point, just very ho-hum. It seems like everyone kind of knows what you're getting from him. Very average pitcher. Model gives him a 99 rating at 100 is average. Probably slightly unlucky with a slightly inflated ERA this season, but it's just pretty run-of-the-mill ho-hum. You kind of know what you're going to get from him. A solid 5 to 6 innings, it seems like. Very average pitcher, which is not going to bode well against this Rays offense, which is really good. Tyler Glasnow, Model still loves him. His ERA is dropping, but the model thinks it should drop even more. His underlying metrics suggest it should be around 3. A guy that I've been loving and continue to want to back. We're going to be on the Rays here at minus 175. It's a B grade pick. Anything minus 184 or better is a B grade, minus 169 or better is an A grade. Model says the Rays win about 2 out of 3 times, and the price should be right around minus 200. Projected total is 8.3. Model says 8.3. Actual total is 8.5. So pretty well priced total, in my opinion. A great series here. Orioles and Rays battle for the top of the AL East. Probably under the radar, not your sexiest teams, coming into the season, but feels like a must-watch 4-game series here. Cousin Jared, what do you got for us?
I was about to say, may not be sexy to you. It feels pretty sexy to me. If you like good baseball. So I feel like I come on here and I say the same things quite often, but I hope that gives you some insight into kind of how I view things and kind of how I have my processes and everything. This is the biggest starting pitching mismatch on the board for today. And it's the Rays at home. I mean, come on, I don't know what more you need based off what you've seen this season from Glasnow and the Rays playing at home. I mean, yes, the Orioles are very good. They've won a bunch of games that we probably thought they wouldn't have won through various circumstances. But playing the Rays, I don't think this is one of those games going against Glasnow. So I think that he's too good. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. You see him and Spencer Strider going today, 2 guys that have Sideline has ranked with a number in the 60s, which is better. Lower is better. And so, I mean, I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to back a pitcher as good as him.
And of course, you mentioned Spencer Strider, a little nugget for people right there. Of course, he's facing Zach Gallen. Cousin Jared, are you still debating dropping a total for our Discord people on that game? Are you still?
Yeah, definitely still looking into it. Y'all can expect something here pretty soon, is what I would say.
All right. So a little bonus if you're listening to Discord again, if you are not yet. Links in the show description to sign up there on Dub Club. The Orioles have done so well because of their bullpen. So if this game is tight late, you're going to get a little scared. The Rays need to get out early. They should get out early. If you want to play first 5, as of right now, the edge on the full game in the first 5 is identical. So if that's something you're interested in, drop a little on that first 5, mainly because you don't really want it to be tight late. If so, right. You might be a little bit of trouble there. Might want to go ahead and cash out early on that first 5. You can get better odds if you have them to win, or at least just take the push if it happens to be tight and just get out of Dodge if that's the way it plays out. So you got that option. I looked at the run line as well, big favorite. The run line edge on the Rays is a little bit smaller. As of now, the numbers move here. We record this show. There's a lot of movement in lines kind of basically as we're recording this show. And so I try to run things early, get a feel for it. I run it the day before, right before, et cetera. Run again in the morning, and then I kind of re-update it here want to get done recording and make a second round of picks for our people on Dub Club. But that's the benefit of getting the cheat sheet, all the prices needed for A grades on first fives, run lines, etc., so you can kind of track that movement, shop around, and see what you like for now. And who knows if this is going to be the case in 3 hours. Right now, my thought would be first five or money line, run line a little bit worse, but that could easily change. And the run line isn't that much worse. It's just, a little bit more of a, less advantageous situation than just laying it, even though it is a little bit of a price. A player prop for you here, Kyle Gibson, under 5.5 strikeouts. Cousin Jared, I'm going to give you a little bit of a statistics quiz here. If you can see here, this is Kyle Gibson strikeouts. He has gone under this number 80% of the time. Why this is minus 150 right now on FanDuel is kind of beyond me. I assume at DraftKings and one of the other places that Outlier polls, I can't remember which one it was, is in the minus 180s. I assume FanDuel is going to jump it up maybe by the time you see this, which is why I dropped a note to the Discord. I said, hey, y'all, this is the prop of the day. Get it at FanDuel minus 150 before it goes up. This number should be 4.5. It's completely mispriced by a full run. You can see if it was at 4.5 here, he'd at least get to 5. Little bit of a statistics quiz for you, though, here. If you'll notice these numbers, we would look at what his performance has been this season, and we would call this a right-skewed distribution. Right-skewed meaning it has a longer right tail. Cousin Jared, one of the things that we talk about in statistics, it's on the first exam that I give to my students every semester, is if you have a right-skewed distribution, is the mean greater or less than the median? Do you know the answer to this question? We haven't talked about this, so I'm literally putting you on the spot. Do you know if the mean is greater than or less than the median?
Well, of course, the mean is greater than the median because it's going to be skewed higher based on these outlying higher numbers that would be at the right.
Absolutely. Well done. You get an A for today, Cousin Jared. Okay. You can see this right skew distribution is 2 times he got to 11 strikeouts. One of those recently against the Twins, who we talked about earlier. The highest, most strikeout team in baseball. Yeah. And so what happens is when you look at the average, his average strikeouts look a little bit higher. But, in gambling, we actually don't care about the average. Surprisingly, we care about the median. Why? Because the median is what separates the top 50% from the bottom 50%. We are concerning ourselves with percentages and probabilities. So it's kind of a misnomer there. We talk about averages a lot in statistics, and I'll just give this brief little why we do that. In statistics, it's because the mathematical properties of the mean are easier to work with. So we use a lot of averaging. It's easier to find. It's easier to work with. There's a lot of things we can do with it. But in sports betting, the median actually is more useful. And this is a greatest situation why. When you look at Kyle Gibson, you should be looking at his median number of strikeouts, not his mean. The mean's a little bit inflated because of those 11s. I don't know why this is 5.5. It should be 4.5. We're going to go under 5.5 at minus 150. The Rays are, a good offense. Gibson could get run pretty early. Even if he doesn't get run early, you look at those numbers, 4 or 5 is probably where he's going to land, under 4.5. A really strong bet. Cousin Jared, after you've aced that quiz, do you have anything else to say for yourself?
I've been playing a lot of Immaculate Grid recently. It's fun. If you want to know how much you don't know, play Immaculate Grid.
I have actually not played that yet. I've seen it on Twitter a lot. People talking about it.
You may not be the person that's applicable to, because with your mind in baseball, you can probably remember the random players that have played for some of these teams. But
it's very possible. I've heard that if you know random middle, like journeyman relievers, that you're going to do really well. So apparently if you don't know, just type in like Octavio Dotel and you're like 50-50 on getting it right. I feel
or shout out to Landon Parker. Fernando Rodney is a good one. Or if you want to throw out maybe the best one ever, Edwin Jackson.
Yes.
There's a lot of them that you can throw out there like that.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, you can sign up at Outlier.bet/professor. When I do this in the morning, it doesn't show the expected value that sort of thing on screen. It's like they haven't gotten in their system quite yet, but that was a plus expected value pick according to Outlier. A little bit later in the day, it'll show up with their exact metrics on that. So you can kind of get all those good plus expected value picks. They integrate, again, they bring in all that information from the big four domestic sports books. You can shop around, you can see all that data. A great service to have if you play player props. Outlier.bet/professor gets you a free 7-day trial. And if you are not already playing daily fantasy, Thrive Fantasy is an official partner of Picks with the Professor, where you can pick an entire lineup of players, enter in a contest, or just pick a couple props, parlay them together. And if they all win, you win. New users that use the promo code SIDES or the sign up link in the show description get a 100% instant first deposit match up to $250. So sign up today and take advantage of some free money. Cousin Jared, that's all we've got today. Any parting words for the viewer?
No parting words today. I think we're like sub 40 days until college football season starts off. I think we're about 35 or so. So it's going to be here sooner than you think. I
did mention to Mrs. Professor, I was like, August 1st comes and I've really got to get working back on the football models. I've been focusing on the baseball stuff, all the tweaks, all the additions, trying to format some stuff just to get it, again, a little bit easier to digest for the viewer, all the extra stuff we're dropping into Dub Club. But I was like, August 1st, I've got to really shift gears. And whatever I've got for baseball, we're going to write it out. And hopefully, it's a bit, the A grades have been working. The totals have been working. We're up to a little over 3% ROI on the totals this year and on the A grades. The A plus play of the day even higher, right? Yeah. And so we're chugging along, slow and steady, making our money in baseball. And when we get to August 1st, it's just going to be what we're working with. And I've got to get to the football models again and get that going.
Music to my ears.
Exactly.
You working on a model that I get to benefit from is music to my ears.
Fair. It was not music to Mrs. Professor's ears. She dreads the fall because I am dead to her on Saturdays. It's it's a different world. But all right, well, that's then all we've got. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can enjoy all the sports betting content provided on this channel. It's dropped right into your feed. Be back again tomorrow with more baseball betting content. But until then, as always, best of luck, and remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.